Hello and welcome back to another episode of Fully Booked, the Hidden Gems author podcast, in which Craig Touch, myself, Roland Hume, chat some of the interesting figures and leading lights of this crazy industry of writing and publishing. And today we are delighted to welcome back a very, very special guest, Randi-Lee Bowslaugh, who is, I wrote this down last time. I was quite impressed with this. She is an author, she's a speaker, and she's a kickboxer. I don't think we spent enough time talking about that last time, but Randi-Lee, welcome back to the podcast. How are you doing today? Don't kick me.
Well, I think you're probably a little too far away to do that. I am doing good though. Just had dinner, so I'm fat and happy.
Oh, well, fantastic. Fat and happy. That is the goal, isn't it? And we wouldn't be here without the man himself, Craig Touch, the owner and founder of Hidden Gems and an author himself. We won't talk about fat or happy. How are you doing, Craig?
I'm doing well. Thanks, Roland, and thanks for joining us again, Randy. You have been on before, but today we're talking about something different. And the topic that we want to talk about is second editions of books, right? So we're not talking about like volume 2. We're talking about, a republication of a book that has already been published. And some of the reasons why you would do that, some of the things you have to think about and do and all that stuff. So why don't you start off by, giving us the quick and dirty about yourself again, because, some of us may not remember or have seen the previous episode. And then we can talk about this whole second edition stuff.
Sure. So, my name is Randi-Lee Bowslaugh. I am in Canada, and it is cold today. Gross. But I have a couple of kids, lots of fur babies. They are not in the room with me, thank goodness. And I've been writing, since 2017 now. Well, publishing since 2017. Been writing my whole life. And I'm just super excited to be back. And I used to kickbox. I haven't kickboxed now in a few years because I started getting some chronic pain issues, which prevented me from doing that. But that's okay because now I ride horses.
Ooh, that's even better.
Wow. I mean, I think the pain's supposed to happen to the opponent when you're kickboxing, not yourself, right?
Exactly, right?
Okay, great. So what is the books that you're writing? I think you were mentioning how you write nonfiction mostly, right?
Yes.
So I guess I can think of a lot of reasons why a nonfiction book, well, it depends on the topic, of course, but a nonfiction book would need a second edition because often things change depending on your topic, right? I know, like in university, every year they come out with a new version of the textbook so that they can sell you that new version and you can't use the old version. And I remember from those days, right? Especially when the professor's the one writing the textbook. So, but I know in fiction it happens as well. So we can talk about both cases. But so for your stuff, what are you writing, and why do you specifically find the need for a second edition?
Yeah, so later this year is going to be my first time having my second edition type of book come out, and that's kind of what prompted the topic. And because when you put it out and say, okay, well, you've been on before, what are you going to talk about now? There's always lots to talk about. But it got me really thinking, okay, why write a second edition? So the reasons that I chose to for this book was it's been 5 years since my brother's death. Lots has changed in that time. When I published the first edition of the book, it was on the 1-year anniversary of his death. So I did it very quickly. Still a great book, very tearjerker, but having time to go through therapy, learn some more things about the situation, I was able to go back into this book, and it's nearly double what it was before content-wise. So it wasn't just a little rewrite. It's almost like a whole nother book inside of it, which is, I think, fantastic. My goal was 10% new content, and I hit like 50. So, but it was really to bring out more emotions of things that I had a chance to learn about through therapy, and also statistics, and go deeper in the research of addictions and that kind of thing, because there's always new statistics that come out and new research, and digging a little bit more into the coping strategies as well. I felt like I did not put enough in the first edition with coping strategies, so that chapter just kind of exploded in this one, which is really important, I think, for this specific topic. And I added pictures.
Ooh, now, how did you add pictures? Did you add pictures in all editions? Like, are they black and white or the print things? How did you do that? That's a pretty major upgrade.
It is. So the print editions will be black and white pictures to keep the cost lower. But the ebooks, which is I think what people tend to buy more of, I know I do, because there's just so much room in the house. Those ones are full colored photos.
Wow. Well, it sounds like you had a lot of good reasons to put out a second edition. Now, do you envision that people that bought the first one would want to get this, or is this really more for just anyone new to the book?
So when I first started writing it, I thought it would just be people new to the book because I was thinking it was going to be a smaller amount of new content. But after having done all the writing for it, because I added so much new content, it feels like the people who have read the first edition could pick this one up and gain a ton more insights and a ton more, well, I get told it's a tearjerker, so use a lot more tissues again. So I think that it definitely has value to people who have already read the first one, which, like I said, was not my intention, but I'm that way.
Yeah, I mean, listen, anytime you can upgrade the experience for people, but how do you then market it? Do you send it to your existing list and say, hey, I have this new edition, and or are you just sort of hoping that they'll see it through the regular marketing channels that you would do to distribute the book, or what are you thinking there? So
I'll admit I'm horrible for having that whole newsletter list that people tell you to have, and you should have. I'm bad at having it. I do have a newsletter. I'm going to be more active on it this year, ideally. So I will send it out to that list, but because I'm not as active on that as I should be, it's not as good of a list. But I definitely am promoting it through, going on other people's shows. That's always been the biggest one. Working with my publicist, Mickey, and social media tends to be the biggest one. So I've seen the most growth in book sales and things through making shorts. My YouTube show that I have, making shorts of it and putting it on TikTok. I had never done that in previous years, but now with how technology is, all I have to do is do the episode and then it gives me like 5 to pick from. And I'm like, okay, those 3 are good. And it seems to really be what's attracting new people. And so new readers are going to come that way.
Now, do you use a service? I know Opus does that for free. I've done that a couple of times with our podcast. But so is that what you use? Do you have something else?
I've been using Riverside for mine this past year, and it will just it will auto generate those things.
Okay, well it's always good to do unconventional marketing, right? Those sometimes end up being a lot better than some of the stuff that people throw money at that everyone else is doing, and thus it's hard to compete with that, right? Everyone's throwing money in Facebook ads, and so it's hard. But if you're doing something that is less conventional, then you're more likely to reach sort of a whole group of readers that are not already inundated with other people's books.
Yeah. And I feel like doing it that way because it is short clips from a show where I'm interviewing other people. I'm not saying this is my book and you should buy it and shoving it at them. It gives them a little glimpse of the type of personality that's in the book, since it is a nonfiction, right? It's about my story with his death. So it gives you that glimpse of who the author is and what kind of personality the book might have, because I write the same way I talk for the most part. So it's going to give you that, I'm going to have this nice sit down conversation with this fun person about a hard topic, but this might be fun then.
Yeah, no, for sure. Okay, so let's sort of think about what are the reasons that people would want to write a second edition. So obviously, like, you had more content, you had things that changed in some of the topics that you talked about, and obviously that's the big one, right? Especially for nonfiction, things change. If it's science, new discoveries are made, new research comes out. But for other types of books, I know that lots of times you'll see even novels that it'll say, this is the second edition. What are some of the reasons why people would, why authors would want to do that?
I think to clean stuff up, right? So
Mhm.
authors, and I have a lot of author friends, as most of us tend to do. And there's somebody in particular when you're saying that question, because he had re-released a couple of his books that was like the first ones he ever published. And as we publish more, just like anything, we get better. So going back and giving things a little bit more fresh take, or knowing, oh, this sounds cliche, I'm going to put it a different way. It gives the book a little bit nicer of a feel when you're reading it. So I think that's a big one for the fiction writers, is that as we get better at writing, we can go back and make our beginning works better. So my coworker, oh, go ahead.
No, you carry on. But I'm enthusiastic about what you're saying. So carry on. I didn't mean to disrupt you.
It's all good. So my coworker keeps giving me a series of books that she's been reading. We've been switching off books, and it's not that it's rewritten, but I read the first one by this author, and now I've read the third one. I'm like, wow, this third one is so much better written than the first one. So if that author ever did choose to rewrite the first and second, I understand why, because they've gained so much knowledge and skill in their craft that they want to go back and do it better.
Absolutely. I was going to say one of the challenges that we have as authors is when somebody discovers us and wants to read our books, normally they say, I will go and read all their books starting with number 1. And I'm like, no, actually, number 1, not such a great book. Now I think about it. I wrote and published 11 books before I had my first bestseller. So it's kind of like, and yeah, doing a second edition means you can go back and retroactively do it right.
Exactly. That's how I feel about this one that's coming out. Not that the first edition was bad by any means, but this one is just so much better. And you're on mute.
Great.
You're on sorry. Mute. I have the same issue. I wouldn't want anyone to go back and read the first, I don't know, at least definitely the first book, probably the first few, without me having it. Like I stopped at one point. I just stopped talking about those books, stopped marketing them. Just like I didn't necessarily pull them out of circulation, but I certainly left them off to rot where they should go. But but you know, it's interesting too, because there was a time where back when we started publishing, you know, the marketing engine of Amazon is that, you know, that period of time where their algorithms are pushing your book. And one of the things that was common back in the day was to republish your book, but generally it was the same version of the book. You'd pull it, you'd republish it, and that would sort of start Amazon's engine up and running, and it would start pushing your book again, right? It was a little sort of hack that people were doing, and eventually Amazon stopped that. They had put in different rules in place, but that might be one reason too. I mean, not obviously at this point now, if you want to do that, you would need to significantly change the book so that you could say that it's a second edition. So it's not something you necessarily want to do just like every month or a few months to try to. But there might be extra incentive to doing it when you're looking at an older book and you're thinking, well, do I really want to take the time to redo that one when I could just start a new project? But maybe there's some incentive to doing that if you were to be able to publish it as a new ASAN, not get in trouble with Amazon, still be within their rules, but that will help sort of give a new launch to an old title.
Yeah, and I feel like on that kind of train of thought, I love the idea of doing it as like even an anniversary edition. I'm not calling mine an anniversary edition, but it's 5 years. So I really like that idea that, if it's 5 years and now here's a renewal, and it might have a little bit new content, or 10-year, right? It gives you both the readers from the past going, an anniversary edition, I wonder what's all new and fresh, right? Wording attracts people in. And again, that girl from work, she bought the 20th anniversary edition of the series she likes because it's an anniversary special edition. So it definitely has some value to go back and add things to market in that way.
Yeah, Yeah, I think that anniversary editions are a big thing too, especially if it's something that's really popular that you have a lot of sort of interaction with fans about, and things that are sort of almost outside the book. You almost can collect that and make it as part of your anniversary edition. If you're really big on social, if there's other things that are connected to your book, sometimes over time all that stuff sort of builds and allows you to use that to bring into a new edition and sort of like a celebration of your book and how long it's been out and how popular it's been. And I think fans appreciate that in certain circumstances. And
one of the advantages is if you have it as an anniversary edition, it's special, it's got new content, you can sell it to the same people who bought your first one. Whereas we used to churn those books to try and reach a new audience, which the way you explained it when you were like talking about republishing to get the juice out of it, I was like, now I think about it, I can understand why Amazon stops that. It sounds so sketchy when we describe it.
Well, I mean, the problem is like, it's like people weren't doing anything. I don't know. In my opinion, it wasn't that you were necessarily doing something wrong. You were taking advantage of the way that Amazon worked, in the sense that they would drop your book from their promotion after a certain amount of time. And so you kind of wanted to restart that. But from the other side of it, I guess their concern was, and it's not that it was not valid, it's certainly a concern, was that it was confusing to readers, because they might think that this is a new book when it's not, and then accidentally buy it if you're putting it as a different ASA. If you're just republishing as the same ASA, and then they already know they bought it because it'll show up in their orders. And I don't even know if you probably can rebuy a book, but why would you if it's an ebook? So if you're, but I guess that is another sort of choice that you have, though. Like, you could republish a book as a second edition on a new ASAN, or you could just say this is an update and republish it on the same. So what did you do in your case?
I definitely got a new one. But again, it feels like a new book because of so much new content. So I think it really depends on how much updating of the book you've done.
Right. Did you pull the old one then?
I haven't yet. I've been debating whether or not to do so. I haven't decided.
Yeah, I guess, I mean, it's, you kind of think like, okay, well, on the one hand, what's the point of having both? Because you want new people to read the second one. It's got more information, right? And you don't want them to like buy the first one, then be annoyed that, and then they see that there's a second one and I just bought this one. Yeah. But on the same time, like, there might be websites out there that are pointing to your book specifically, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, and then you kind of lose that if you unpublish it.
Yeah, exactly. It'll probably just chill up there, but maybe I'll update the description to be like, there's also a second edition.
Yeah, I think that's
we had a guest, Joe Darlington, who wrote a book called Being James Bond, and then he did a second edition, which he spoke to about, and he did actually pull that first edition. I just went and checked, and so these only got the. So there we go. And if you can't trust Joe, then who can you trust?
Well, and I think what she said is a good idea. Like, if you want, you could update the old one and tell people, hey, there's a second edition. You should probably go buy that one. And if by leaving it up there, if there are things that are linked to it, you won't lose those links, because they'll still pull up a product page that will then direct people to the new book. So I think that's a pretty good strategy. Because you're being honest with the readers, right? You're saying, listen, this is an old version. It's still for sale if people want it, historically. But I want to let you know there is version 2, and it's the same price, I assume. Maybe it's not, but either way, you could
close
be
enough.
Like, it's similar, but it's like, hey, 50% more content, and yeah. So I think that's a good compromise, at least. So okay, yeah. So for Being James Bond, I don't recall, what was his reasoning for doing a second edition? Was it also, Roland? Was it also for he just updated stuff about it, or what was his reasoning?
He was planning to write a second book, and then he was like, well, actually, now I think about it, as a ton of stuff I should put in the first book. So he redid that. But it was, the interesting thing was he had a live launch and had guests, and there had been a lot more buzz built up, so the people who'd missed out on buying it the first time got to buy it the second time, and then that made interest for the next book, because they always say the best advertising for your current book is your next book.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so now when someone's considering, or doing a second edition, are there any things that they should avoid doing with that?
So this is going to be up to every author's discretion, obviously, but I feel like you shouldn't take out a whole bunch from the first. Because there was a few paragraphs here and there. I'm like, that sounds kind of ridiculous now, and I'm adding this whole other thing over here that describes it better. But I really didn't want to take out anything. So, and I think that is something that I would shy away from, is taking out any content. Maybe depending on the type of book, some fantasies can kind of drag on when they're talking about running through forests and things. They wanted to condense something, sure, but I mean, if people received the book well on the first go round, why would you remove things unless there was things that 90% of people said, oh my gosh, there was way too much running through hills? Maybe you condense it because you've had so much feedback. But if you haven't had any feedback like that, leave in what they like, add more. People want more of your book if they're buying it.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I think it's always, you're always going to be upsetting someone if you change something, right? Which is fine if nobody's buying the second one if they've already bought the first one. But I think, we see this, look what happened with Star Wars, the original series, right? And then he comes along and re-edits it. So he basically came up with a new edition of it. People were very angry about that, right? He changed some fundamental things that people, the people were attached to, even though I bet you when he was doing them, he probably wasn't thinking, Lucas probably wasn't thinking at all that people would have a problem with it. Like the one thing about, Han shooting first or not shoot, with Greedo in the bar there, right?
And shot first.
Yeah. So in the original, he hand shot first, right? But in the re-release, he has the other guy shoot first, and maybe he thought that was a pretty innocent change, like he just wanted to show that Han's not like that. But then everybody was very upset about that. So you do have to be careful about changing things that people might like, and it's maybe not always obvious what they might like. Mm-hmm. I agree. Pulling out repetitive stuff is one thing, but changing a fundamental thing, which again may not seem fundamental to you at the time, but others might think that it is. Yeah, so exactly. You really want to think about that. Yeah, it's interesting. I know I'm reading a series now. When I was younger, I read. I won't name drop. When I not that this author would care, right? But I read a very big fantasy series when I was younger, and recently I went back looking to see if the author had written anything new, and I saw that they had continued the series, sort of like a new series based on the same series, and I was reading through it, and this book is so repetitive, Mm-hmm. I can't even, it's hard, and I know I loved his writing when I was younger. And I might have just been less discerning of a reader, probably, and not noticed that. Like maybe he was always like this, but now it's just tedious. Like not just repeating, so that people remember what happened in previous books. Like paragraph to paragraph, it would just repeat the same ideas over and over.
At that point, re-release, condense it.
Oh yeah, I feel like it's. Yeah, I feel like, he had a new idea. He knows he has an established fan base, so he has a small idea. He's trying to make it into a big story. But yeah, that's where I think it would really benefit to pull that, get rid of probably half the book, and maybe throw in some new ideas. So I think there are. But again, maybe other readers love that about him, and
And
it's
on
hard.
that note, you have to think about who your target audience is, right? Is it the younger readers? Like you said, you loved it when you were younger. So if the target is those younger readers, maybe that's writing well for them. But if it's the adults who read a lot, it might not be, because like you said, now you're more discerning and you can remember a lot more content. You don't need things to be so repetitive. So that could definitely play a huge part in it as well.
Yeah, I think the targeted audience of this one is people with memory issues. But and I have a bad memory, but but listen, I mean, you change as a writer too, right? And maybe some people get worse, I don't know. But I think, we recently, Roland wrote an article, and this was in the news with Matt Damon, for Netflix. He'd said like the new thing is that they want their content to be repetitive because people are on their phones and they're distracted. And so if you have a plot point, and somebody's not really paying attention, then they get lost. So they want you to reiterate it over and over again. Yeah, that's one thing in a film, right? But when you're reading a book, you're not texting,
right? You don't have the book and the phone at the same, like your eyeballs can't do it.
Yeah, so I think it's one thing with visual media, but with books, it's like I think you can pretty much be sure that the person is focused.
Yeah, and if they're not, they're probably going to end up rereading the page because they're tired and
right.
Sleep.
Oh, and that happens. Yeah, that happens all the time. I'll read 2 or 3 pages and I'll be like, I don't even know what I just read. Like I'm thinking about something else. My eyes are moving. But yeah, no, I understand that. So pricing. So you sort of mentioned like it was close enough. So when you release a new version, I guess that does give you the opportunity, not that you can't always change your price, but it does sort of give you that opportunity to come up with something different. And in your case, when you're publishing something that's significantly bigger, it might justify a higher price. So what are your thoughts around that? Especially because, you might have those people that do want to buy book 2, but now they're like, okay, well, I paid, $10 for book 1 and now I got to pay $12 for book 2, and it's hard to give those people a discount, especially on Amazon. Like it's not like you can give them a coupon code, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, it's tricky. I definitely charge more for this, but at the same time, back when I was publishing this book, especially even my earlier books, going further back, when you're a new author, a lot of us, because I've spoken to a lot of them, and you could probably attest to this, you don't consider yourself an author worthy of charging what an author should charge at the beginning.
Ain't that the truth?
Right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So you're charging $10 because I just want people to read it. I just want you to get it. So if it's really cheap, you'll just buy it. Whereas now, as a much more established author, I'm like, $10 is not worth all of that effort that I put in, and the content is worth more, right? So you can kind of justify it and go, you know what? If somebody looks at the price and goes, okay, I don't want to get it, you go, okay, then you're not my target audience. Like, that's fine. Obviously, personally, I would never pay like $30 for a paperback, but it doesn't mean that it can't be some kind of middle ground.
Yeah. When we started out in romance novels, if you looked at the top 50 page, 99 cents was pretty much what everybody was charging. It was a race to the bottom, right? And I'm happy that now that's changed. And now when you look at the top 50, it's hard to find a 99-cent book. I'm glad that that authors finally realize that their time is worth something, and just going lower and lower and lower is not necessarily like the right strategy. And if everyone just charges a realistic amount, then that's what the market will bear. But one of my concerns about all the AI content being pumped out is it would be much easier for someone who's writing a book there's an article this last week I posted about it in my newsletter about there's New York Times article about an author using AI to pump out romance novels, and it was taking her 45 minutes basically to write a novel. At that point, if you're charging 99 cents, who cares, because you're pumping them out, right? And that's that concern, is like you're devaluing the product because it takes you no time to create it. It's like when you build something in a factory and you automate the factory and now you can charge less. but that's not what we want from writing, and that's not what authors want. Hopefully it's not what readers want. It takes you more than 45 minutes to consume that content. Isn't that worth more than $1, right? Especially when the author is getting 33 cents of that.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. I mean, it's the same in any kind of creative industry, right? Because at the local mall, there's a little store that's just all artists, like paintings. And so, yeah, they're going to cost more than if I walk over to Walmart and get one that's just pumped out from the factory. And you might look at the piece of art and go, oh, wow, it's so beautiful. Oh, my goodness, you want $60 for this? Well, yeah, because they spent 200 hours on it, right? So I think it comes again back to that target market and valuing yourself as the creative individual with that work. Yeah, you don't want to take yourself out of the market by overcharging, but at the same time, I mean, if I'm looking at a shirt and the shirt is $5, I might go, what is wrong with this shirt? Why is it only $5?
The Temu effect.
Please.
Yeah. It's true. I mean, you get what you pay for, and people do sort of understand that concept. I'm glad that that's sort of the way that the trend is now. I'm hoping it doesn't change. So, okay. So for the second edition, if as a reader, I wonder, what is it that, so, okay, there's more content, but I think most people are they're gonna think about, why do I want to buy it? And if it's a novel, like, I can't imagine, when I was younger, I feel like I had a lot more time in my life, or I used it efficiently, or maybe now I'm old and I black out and I don't even realize. But I would reread books, and I would rewatch movies. I never do that anymore, right? Because now my time is so much more valuable, and the days fly by so fast.
Yeah.
But I wonder, like, now, what would entice me as a reader to buy a book, even if it's something I really liked, and read it again because it's a second edition. And I do get it for the fiction stuff. There's probably a stronger argument, but I think with the nonfiction, there's a stronger argument. With fiction, I think it's a tougher sell for sure.
So, okay, I've got two thoughts happening. So first, I'll talk about the nonfiction, because clearly that's my jam. So with the nonfiction, like you said, it very is easy to establish that more content usually means that it's research has changed, or there's more research in it. Like I said, this edition for me, I put so much more research into the backside, like what is addiction and stuff, and into the coping strategies. So it's a book that you can now pick up and go to just even that chapter, if you so chose to, and say, wow, this is much more in depth about why going for a walk helps with grief, whatever it is, right? Because it goes into much more depth. So it's a lot more educational in that way. On the flip side of that, fiction, one of my favorite authors came out with a Kickstarter last year, 2 years ago, something like that, where she was re-releasing content, right? Books with some new content in there. And I jumped on that because I know I love her books. So I think that's a big pull. If you have a good audience that you are selling to these people, we will, if we really like it, we will buy it going, oh, you're just adding like a new minor character. Sure, I want to learn about this new minor character. They play no magical role. The book itself hasn't really changed, but there's this new minor thing that I need to know about because I already love you. That is, I think, how the fiction world can really promote itself. Again, you already have to kind of have that base, but if you have that base, it's a great way to pull them back in, not spend a ton of time writing a completely new book, but just giving them more of what they already love is really important. And what this author did was, so it's a big long series of books, but she took two of the main characters whose stories kind of go at the same timeline, and instead of having it as two separate books, she integrated it. So now you have this one ginormous book. So I got on, it came in 4 volumes, because like the books were thick. So she integrated them. So now you're going back and forth, same timeline, back and forth between these two siblings for their stories. And it just gave a completely different effect, even though you knew exactly what was going to happen because you've read both books, but now they're happening at the same time. So depending on what your series is like as a fiction author, you can pull different little tricks like that where there's only a tiny bit of new content, but it's giving the reader a completely different experience while reading it.
Right.
I do remember that Stephanie Meyer was going to produce a new version of Twilight from Edward's perspective. And it was the same story.
Okay. But those are different. That's a different
Orson
book. Scott Card
Yeah.
did that, right? He was one of my favorites. Orson Scott Card is one of my favorite authors growing up, science fiction. And he wrote Ender's Game and Speaker for the Dead and that series. And then years later, he went back and did exactly that. He basically rewrote the series, but from different characters' perspectives. And it created a new book. It's the same plot, but now you're seeing their motivations. You're seeing what happened to them off screen, you know, all those things, right? So that is kind of like, that's another book. But I think one thing that we've seen authors do, we've talked a bit about it on the podcast too, is the idea of like a Kickstarter type thing where you come out with this special edition that is extra special, not just like, you know, hey, it's an anniversary and here's the same old thing, but this is like, you know, they'll do a hardcover that's like got a gold inlay in it or something, or they'll like have some little I don't know, characters that they have printed that can come with it or something like that. I think that's another way you do it, although those usually are sold sort of as a Kickstarter or something, not really through Amazon. But it is a different edition of your book, and it's another way to not just cash in, although that is obviously one of the big reasons, but I think for readers that love the book and the world, usually it gives them like extra stuff, like that they, you know, like collectible stuff, you know. They can feel sort of special about, I have this first special edition, you don't have it, you know?
Well, exactly. Even though for this Kickstarter I went in on, even though I got the ebook editions, I still got a little piece of mail with the like a little patch of their symbol and stuff. So it still was that little something that I can be like, yeah, it's my favorite, and I stick it on my wall. And
yeah, you know, I feel like that's one of the things that is much easier to do these days. Like I've talked about that, my 3D print stuff, right? And if I was writing, you know, a book in a world that had stuff like that, like, you know, sort of maybe fantasy or sci-fi, like maybe I 3D print objects and sort of give as giveaways or as special edition type things. Like, I think that's is something that more people, I'm surprised that more people don't do that, right? Because it does take time, and you know, have to have the modeling, you know, the printer and stuff like that. But that's one of those easy ways to do it, to create sort of this extra value that doesn't really cost you. It's not like back in the day where you would have to like find some company that can design and build the dies that they need to create. Now you just do it in your own printer, and you know,
I mean, it's the old adage of marketing, isn't it? It's like, instead of lowering the price, increase the value.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I think that's, you know, and like it again comes down to, you know, whether the same people want to buy it. But I mean, that's not really. I don't think most authors are doing a second edition to resell the book to the same people, right? They're doing it to improve the book going forward to a new audience. But, you know, if other past readers want to buy it again, and
then cool.
Bonus. Yeah, it's a big bonus to that. Okay, so, and then what else do we have to think about when we're doing a second edition? Is there, you know, do you have to make it clear on your, I don't know what the rules are really with Amazon these days. Like, do you need to say that it's a second edition specifically so that you know, avoids that sort of reader confusion?
It does give you a little field to fill in saying edition whatever.
Okay, yeah, right. Yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah, so I definitely recommend doing that because, I mean, why wouldn't you? You want people to know that this is the correct second edition, especially as you promote it. You want them to go get the correct thing. The other thing, as you're asking that, what else do we need to think about? Well, the title. Do you want to keep the exact same title or change it? So for me, the original title is Goodbye Too Soon. And I am obsessed with that title. I absolutely love it. However, I also wanted to, again, differentiate it for this new edition and give people a little bit more, what the heck is this book, if they just simply hear the title. So I added a subtitle. So now it's Goodbye Too Soon, A Family's Lost by Drug Overdose. So now it is very clear what the book is about, but you can still know that it's connected to this other book and it's the next part, either the next part or an addition to. And yeah.
I think that's great. That's
yeah. That makes sense. Yeah. I guess there's a point where, you know, if you're adding a lot of stuff, you might start to think to yourself, is this a second edition or should I really be writing another book? So what is it where do you make that sort of determination when you're deciding about writing a second edition where you're going to be adding a lot of stuff? Like you added a lot of stuff. You could have perhaps written a follow-up instead. Was that ever a consideration, and what sort of pushed you in one direction?
Yeah, so it's definitely a consideration. The reason I kept it as a second edition is because the way the book follows is that it follows my perspective as the little sister, my perspective of getting the phone call that my brother dies, to planning the funeral, and then throughout the burial and all of that. So it gets the story of it, and that's kind of the base. So I'm thinking of like a pyramid, right? The big, strong base. This is the story of it. However, each piece on top is what I built on into the book. So each part of it going into the depth of what is addiction as a mental health. That's a whole other thing. Yes, it's aside from my story, but it fits in because it's like, here's my story, how I got it. Let's talk about why somebody has an addiction. What might be the risk factors? Okay, let's go back to the story. And it's integrated in there. So if I was to make it as a second part as opposed to a second edition, I would have to take out the kind of story part of it. And for me, that's what builds the emotion of it. Because facts are great. I like facts. I like learning. I like statistics. I like all that stuff. But the emotion is really what people are drawn to, I think. So I needed to keep the story emotion part there and then add the things on top that give a little bit more substance to it. And
yeah,
I think,
it sounds like you couldn't split those two apart.
No, I definitely couldn't. For other authors, especially in that world of fiction, you would have to consider it a lot more. Are you adding pieces on top of a main story? Or are you, like you were talking about, you know, same story, but it's a different character's perspective? Well, it really is a different book then. It really is a number 2 in a series of books, not an addition to of the same book. And so you have to decide, am I keeping the same perspective? Am I keeping the same story and just adding more to it? Or do I really want to view this from a different way?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's a really important thing to think about because extending a series to or extending a book in creating a series has a lot of benefits. So, you know, if you're thinking about it and you're saying, oh, you know, I've got a fiction book and I'm, you know, I thought of some other things I should have put into it, you know, and it's gonna add, you know, a subplot, or it's gonna add this, or it's gonna add that. Maybe you should be thinking about, do I want to add that to this book, or should I start fleshing this out a bit more and see if this could maybe be another book? Exactly. And that, you know, that's going to help sell. You know, when you have 2 books, you can help one help sell the other, right? So, exactly. And then, you know, whereas with the second edition, yeah, you might get some overlap, but most of the time people are only buying one of them and they're buying hopefully the latest one. So yeah, you have more potential for profit, but there are definitely reasons to go one way or the other. And I guess that is going to always be up to the author to decide and think about.
Yeah, I think it comes down to what's the purpose of your book, and then you'll know.
Yeah, I think.
You know, that's what is the purpose of Look, I love that as an idea. I was just thinking, I was giving somebody advice the other day, and I said, every book has a theme. You might not realize what the theme is until after you've written it, but every book has a theme. So I think that's a really good one. And I mean, I guess it's fairly obvious what the theme is in your book, but was it as obvious to you when you were writing it, or did you find that maybe you were saying something else by the time you finished it?
A little bit of both. So I definitely knew that I was speaking from a little sister's perspective, so I wanted to speak to family members. I thought, though, at the beginning, it was going to hold a lot more anger and push that emotion through in the book. Whereas by the time I was finished with it, what pushes through is the pain of loving somebody with an addiction. And so it was very different. Same kind of theme, but it really came through in a different way. And I added, as I'm going through it, because I had like a little bit of a, okay, I know I want to start with the phone call, then the funeral home, and then this and that. And I had kind of the plot out in my head. But then as I'm going, I'm making notes going, oh, you know what I need to add here? I need to add statistics about bullying. That's really important right here. So it added a lot more as I'm going through it. It pushed through a lot more things that I was like, I didn't know I wanted people to know this information, but now they need to know this information. So I don't think the theme or the purpose changed, but the delivery of it did.
That's so interesting. Now, unfortunately, we are running up to the top of the hour. So, yeah, we could talk to you for ages, and hopefully we'll have you back to complete the hat trick. But before we ask before we ask you to tell everyone where they can find your books and everything like that, Craig, do you have any final questions?
No, I think this is really interesting. There's really a lot of different things that you have to think about, and I think the first one is do you need a second edition? Why are you doing this? What is your purpose of doing it? And then decide, do I need a second edition, or should I write another book? And then once you decide that, you go from there. And if it's second edition, then we've covered a lot of the reasons why to do that, things not to do. But I think in your case, absolutely, it makes a lot of sense to write the second edition. So hopefully, if anyone is listening to this and thinking about that and whether or not that's something that they want to tackle, this will help them. So thanks for coming on and going through it all with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And I will definitely be back for the hat trick.
Well, that is wonderful. So for everyone who's watching this on YouTube or listening on Spotify or wherever, can you tell them where they can find more details about you and more details about your book?
Yes. So my website is rbwriting.ca, and I am on all the things: YouTube, Spotify, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Substack, all under my name, Randi-Lee Bowslaugh. Make it easy. And then all of my books are on Amazon. Again, just put in my name, Randi-Lee Bowslaugh. There's only one of me. And you will find all of my books, specifically the one I was talking about today, the edition 2. It's called Goodbye Too Soon, A Family's Lost by Drug Overdose. It's on pre-order right now and drops on June 20th, because that would have been my brother's birthday.
Well, we will make sure to pop a link down in the description below. So if you are interested in what Randi-Lee has had to say to us today, then please scroll down there, click on that link, go and check her out, go and check out her books. And while you're down there, there's that big empty comment section. So make sure you leave a comment and let her know how much you appreciated everything she shared with us today. And of course, there's also that subscribe button if you haven't already. Smash that like button. And there is that bell icon. You can click on that and get notified every time there is a new episode of Fully Booked. And of course, there will be a brand new episode of Fully Booked next week. So until then, cheerio.